Who's, and I hope you're doing well wherever you're watching this from. Welcome to the 434 Defense Podcast, where we talk about all things UVA football. And on this Thursday night, we are headed into one of Virginia's biggest games of the season. Granted, we are on game number 4 of the biggest game of the season so far. The altitude is only getting higher, the air is only getting thinner, as the Wahoos sit at 6-1. Having clinched bowl eligibility for the first time under Coach Tony Elliott, and with a real sense of momentum going into the South's oldest rivalry. Now, if you talk to certain Virginia fans, there is almost an equal amount of disdain for UNC as there is for Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech obviously was not in the ACC for a long time, so for the majority of Virginia's football history, North Carolina has been the in-conference rival, and this is the oldest rivalry in the South. That's why Auburn and Georgia have to put that qualifier, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. This has been a great football game. I do not like UNC, but I will begrudge that they've had some good players over the course of their years that have played in this game, whether it's Julius Peppers or Ronald Curry or any of those guys. But this is a whole new situation with UNC football. Obviously, the great coach Bill Belichick is leading the Tar Heels this year. And while they're not a good football team yet, I'm noticing things they're doing better, and I will get into that. But I will say this. This has been a game that Virginia seasons have kind of hinged on in the past. Ever since Virginia Tech joined the Atlantic Coast Conference, this game has kind of fallen somewhere around the middle of the season, kind of at that point in time where teams tend to separate. We're seeing a lot of that in many conferences across the U.S. The Big Ten is currently separating. Michigan's really the only team that we don't really know how good they are. We know Indiana's awesome. We know Oregon's good. We know Ohio State's good. We know Washington's pretty good. We just don't know about USC and Michigan, really. Everyone else, we kind of know what they are. The SEC is a complete crapshoot. And the ACC is kind of in the middle. You've got some teams that have separated, like the University of Virginia. Weird for me to say. And then some teams that are not necessarily separating, like Louisville or like Miami. Georgia Tech separated. Duke is kind of there. They've played everyone pretty tough. But we know, Virginia Tech's not having a great year. We know that Florida State's not having a great year. So there are some teams that are separating. And those teams that separate, the Virginias, the Georgia Techs, TBD on Louisville, Miami, and Wake Forest and Duke. We don't know about those guys yet. We don't know what they're doing. But certain teams like Georgia Tech and Virginia are separating. And the way to secure a spot at the end of the year for whatever the goal ends up being, whether it's playoff, conference championship appearance, bowl game, these weeks where you're getting close, but you're not there yet, that's huge for separation. And I don't think anyone at UVA needs to be told that this is an important game. And I'm glad we are at this point in the season where the situation with Bill Belichick has kind of mellowed down from a national PR perspective. Because this game should be about this Virginia team proving that it is ready to take that next step. I'll get into the UNC film study I did right here. So I watched 2 halves of North Carolina football every play to prepare for this episode and for this week. I watched the first half against Clemson, and I watched the second half against Cal. The first half against Clemson was UNC's worst half of football by far, bar none. It was awful. Terrible. Could not get the ball moving. Cal was actually pretty good, though. A couple things that I noticed. This isn't shocking for a UNC football team, but damn, they're soft. They have one dude on that team that plays hard, and is the running back. Their running back plays hard. He runs hard. He hits the holes. He can be a problem in games. If there is even the slightest hole, that running back will run through it. But, man, the rest of that team is just soft, man. I don't know if this is a coaching point, but when UNC's guards pull, they're not pulling with violent intent. That's a great indicator of how tough a football team is. They're pulling to do a kick-out block or wrap around for power, and they're just kind of hugging the guy. They're just kind of there. They're like, all right, I did my job. I won't get a missed assignment for this play. I got in the way. Like, they'd be better off setting a basketball screen at a certain point because they're just pulling and covering. They're not pulling with violent intent. Any good football team you watch is going to have guards or tackles or even centers that are pulling with violent intent. Pulling with the mission of taking that defensive lineman, whether it's a defensive tackle on a trap play or a defensive end on a counter play or a middle linebacker or outside backer on a power play, and deleting their will to play football anymore. That's how you gain momentum in the run game, by pulling with violent intent. It does not necessarily be CTE warrior, don't lead with your head, but you gotta pull with the intent of clearing that gap and clearing the person that's in it. And I just didn't see that with UNC. They were okay in gap schemes because they down block well, but their pullers, they just weren't generating the kind of plays that gets an offensive lineman like me excited. I like watching a guard pull and really delete a guy from a gap. And you just don't see that with UNC. They down block well and their running back runs hard. They will get chunk plays in the run game. That's just what it is. UNC rolled out their quarterback Gio Lopez for pretty much the whole game against Cal. Comparing him to Max Johnson, who played against Clemson, I did like the football that Gio played a lot better. Granted, I'm sure there's a physical talent difference, but not that much between Cal and Stanford because Cal had just a bunch of those big Samoan and Tongan and Polynesian defensive tackles that are just parking bollards. Like, those guys are hard to move. But I thought Lopez was a lot more dynamic in his play. I thought he was a calmer person in the pocket. I did notice that both quarterbacks had a penchant to run into sacks, and if there is anything that makes an offensive lineman mad, it's a quarterback that runs into sacks. And what I mean by that is when you're setting the pocket and you've got your 5 guys and you're creating that pocket there, you know that the quarterback is there behind you. And you want to be in between the defensive lineman and the quarterback. And unless you have a real special athlete at quarterback, it can be very hard to block effectively when the quarterback goes off script and isn't where the offensive line expects them to be. Rule of thumb, always protect the inside. Just protect. If you're going to get beat as an offensive lineman, get beat on the outside. Don't get beat on the inside because that's where plays get bad. And you just see these quarterbacks run to the outside of a guard and get sacked. And everyone would be like, oh, well, you didn't block the defensive lineman. Well, it's because the quarterback ran into the sack because the guard's doing the right thing. So that's my mild defense of UNC's offensive line. My not so mild prosecution of that offensive line is that some pass protection for them is a complete disaster. Mitchell Melton and Cam Robinson are going to have a day. Daniel Rickert is going to go feral on that offensive line, especially if they're in empty formations. Their empty formation was best described in my notes as a cluster you-know-what. Their empty pass pro was awful. There is no reason that we shouldn't come out of this game with at least 3 or 4 sacks if they want to run out, if they roll out empty. Because, man, they couldn't protect worth a lick in 5-man protections, especially if they rolled out with no running back there. Oh my God, it was terrible. It was awful. They were physically overmatched against Cal and Clemson, and you could just see that they were kind of just there to get in the way. I don't like this UNC offensive line. I just don't think it's very good. I think our defensive line is going to feast in that game. The Washington State game was definitely a challenge because that quarterback Eckhouse and that scheme, they get the ball out so quickly. They're running screens and RPOs where the ball is out on 1,001, 1,002, go. Like, that's not enough time for many defensive linemen to get to the quarterback straight up with no offensive lineman in the way. So you could see our guys were getting frustrated. They're like, man, I'm rushing really well. I'm putting good moves on these guys, and I'm just not getting home. We shouldn't have that problem against UNC because those quarterbacks do like to hold the football. They have a pretty decent wide receiver, number 8. I think he's decent. I think he was able to make some plays against Cal. I thought their running back and their wide receiver and that 8 wide receiver, 37, their running back, Gross, I believe was his name. Those were the 2 guys on offense. The one thing I wasn't expecting to see from North Carolina was how many mental errors. What I expected to see out of this North Carolina squad, as much as I don't like the Tar Heels, was I was expecting a Bill Belichick team. I was expecting a team that was disciplined, that was going to make some plays in the special teams, that was going to kind of steal a game every now and again. But what I saw from this North Carolina team was just a bunch of bad mental errors up and down, especially in the Clemson game. I mean, dude's running out of bounds to catch a pass, guys throwing the receiver out of bounds, missed coverages, like just missed assignments in the pass protection game, missed assignments in the run game, just not an overall hunger. And so, like, I do think that Virginia is going to come out of this game if they go in with the right mindset with a win. And I don't think it's going to be that hard to do. The only thing I will say is that I think UNC's offense has gotten significantly better. I think they've realized what their strengths and weaknesses are, because I don't think they realized that in the Clemson game, or I don't think it had fully revealed itself. I think they were kind of stunned at the TCU result, and they went out and got some nice wins against a Charlotte team and a Richmond team. They were just kind of like, all right, maybe we can ride with this. And Clemson was like, no, you guys are not even close to being in that upper echelon. And, you know, going over to the Cal game, I thought they were pretty good. I thought they were solid. They made an awful fumble that would have won them the Cal game. And even as a Virginia fan, I'm just sitting there watching that play where he fumbles in the end zone. And I'm like, oh my God. If you just keep the ball high and tight, you win the game. That's a bad way to lose a football game. Fumble into the end zone for a touchback. That's a bad way to lose a football game. You feel bad for the players at that point in time. You know, this UNC team, they are a cornered, wounded dog, though. They're looking to restore some pride. They are looking to restore the mission of what UNC football with Bill Belichick and Mike Lombardi was supposed to be, which was the 33rd NFL team. So they're going to be looking to restore that panache, because the reputational harm that's been done this year has been legit on UNC and on Bill Belichick and on Mike Lombardi and that whole staff. And so, like I've said about Virginia Tech with their whole situation with an interim coach, the best way to get back in favor with the fans, with the boosters, with the administration is to win a rivalry game. And so I do think we're going to see a tougher, maybe not tougher, but a UNC team that plays significantly harder this Saturday than they did on a Friday night in Berkeley. I think they are going to be trying to get the most out of this game. It's in their home stadium. It's at Keenan Memorial in Chapel Hill. They're in front of what's left of their fan base, and they're going to try and restore what they had. And so, in the same way that I said don't take Washington State lightly because of their talent and their coaching, don't take UNC lightly because they are in survival mode. They're in sink or swim. This is a season that's going to have to turn around if they want any future for this Belichick-Lombardi project in Chapel Hill. And this is the perfect time of year for a team that's on a hot streak to kind of lose a weird game like this. And this is why I appreciate what Coach Tony Elliott's doing, and it's why I appreciate the way the players are taking care of business. Gutted out a win against Washington State, gutted out a win against Louisville, gutted out a win against Florida State. This is a team that's proven they can win the games close. This is a game, though, that I want to see Virginia turn up the intensity, turn up the explosiveness, and turn up the end result on the scoreboard. I want to see us strike up the band a little, because we kind of, by hook or by crook, we were, Louisville, and all these past 3 wins, man, we've been like Malcolm X, by any means necessary. And it's worked for us. But you can't win every game like that. I mean, you can, but you really don't want to have to win every game like that. You want to be able to achieve a little bit of separation. So I think that's what the mission of this team is going forward, into a couple of these different games where we're not playing, obviously, a very good Louisville team that beat Miami last weekend, a very good Washington State team that took Ole Miss to the wire, and a slightly fraudulent but still apparently talented enough to beat Alabama Florida State team. And this UNC team is a game where we have to capitalize on the momentum, going into your rival's house and winning a game big. There might be some Dabo coaching tree luck that goes into this game, considering how well Clemson did. Maybe we know something in that coaching tree that other teams don't, that maybe Cal didn't know. But man, I don't dislike Washington State. I really like Washington State. I don't hate Louisville. I pity Florida State right now. I really don't like UNC. I want us to beat UNC real bad. Like, obviously, the game last year kind of left a sour taste in everyone's mouth. The win in Chapel Hill last year gave everyone a pretty decent sense of hope. So I think that if we can come out of this game with a win, and if we can do it in style, the sky is truly the limit. Because this is a test of a game you're supposed to win against a team that has been down, and frankly, I don't think it's tough enough to compete on the same field as Virginia this year. And that might sound disparaging to the UNC people, but it's the honest truth. I've watched the film. Like, this Virginia team is tough as nails. This Carolina team, they're not. And going into this game, I want to see Chandler Morris expand the passing game a little bit more. I want to see us challenge on balls deep down the field. I want to see us push the ball. We're not in the crappy weather months yet. I haven't read the forecast for what the weather's going to be in Chapel Hill, but it's not going to be like 30 degrees and freezing rain. We're going to be able to challenge down the field a little bit. We don't have Xavier Brown this week, which I think will be a loss, but we gain back guys like Brady Wilson. Cam Ross is going to be back in the game. Obviously, Edgerrin had a great game against Washington State. I think that's going to be great for our passing game if we can build on that momentum a little bit. I think getting Brady Wilson back is going to be huge. I think the offensive line looking like it was supposed to at the beginning of the year is a great step for us, and I think it was the common denominator for some of the wins where we extended on people, whether it was Stanford or whether it was Coastal Carolina games where we were able to kind of get out in front and be able to really control the game. We've survived with our current configuration because I think the guys we have on the offensive line and Coach Heffernan have done a great job of making a situation that hasn't been that great into a really good situation. Obviously, we've got Jamari Taylor and we've got Harrison Whaley. We've got Noah Vaughn back. I think that's a good 3 running back stable. We've got 4 dudes that can take over a game. We really do. Like, Jamari Taylor has been a star this year so far. He's done a great job for us, and so I expect nothing less than a great performance from him. On the defensive side of the ball, I want to watch the edge rushers, man. I want to see us get after the quarterback. I want to see us knock the quarterback down a little bit. I want to see us get a good lead early in the game. And with a good pass rush like we have, it makes everything easier on the back end of the defense. Whether it was our turnovers that we were able to generate against Washington State, our edge rush ability against Louisville, I think this is a game where I want to see the complete picture. The past 3 weeks, we've had certain parts of the game up, certain parts of the game down. Louisville, we weren't able to push the ball down the field an awful lot, but we ran the ball well and we avoided mistakes. Washington State, defense stepped up. Offense needed to eventually get bailed out at certain points in the game. Florida State, The running game was dominant. We were able to generate some explosive plays. This is a game where I think Virginia can put all the pieces together, and that's what I'm expecting, and that's what I hope to see out of this team because we really can do it. This is a complete football team that's getting healthier down the stretch as opposed to getting hurt. We've survived the injuries. We're at 6-1. We have the whole season ahead of us. The future is now in Charlottesville, Virginia. And listening to Coach Elliott's approach and the press conferences and the way he's speaking to the team, I don't think that the rat poison is getting to our guys. At least, and that's been my biggest talking point throughout this whole season. We're good. We have a chance to do it. We have a talented football team full of tough players who are willing to get the job done by any means necessary. Now, this is a week where we need to not have to do it by any means necessary. Let's get out. Let's get a good lead going. Let's really control this game from Jump Street. And if we can put UNC away, put that thing away by multiple scores, that speaks volumes to the growth of this program. Because this game has been a crapshoot. It's been a topsy-turvy game where Virginia wins close or UNC blows out. You know, I want to get back to the days in the early 2000s and the 1990s where we could take pride in the fact that we knew the South's oldest rivalry was ours. The South is orange. And I think we can do it. We have the guys to do it. We have the horses to do it. And I'm very excited. I'm going to be following my same game day routine. I'm going to be at my girlfriend's house with the dogs, same crew that has been with me since the Florida State game, and going to basically be repeating the same routine to try and keep the good vibes going. I think this week is going to be very, very important. I think it's one of the most important games of the year. Obviously Cal is going to be huge. Cal might be a game day, depending what happens when they play Virginia Tech and how we play UNC. I think Duke is going to be a super important game. I think Virginia Tech is going to be obviously one of the biggest games in Virginia football history recently. I think in the very least since 2019. I'm still telling people to worry about Wake Forest a little bit. I think they're stronger than people realize. And I say all that in the sense that it's not a situation where, oh my God, I hope Virginia can eke out a couple wins so we can come out respectable. We got the horses to win out. We got it. And I just want to see us put the whole picture together against UNC because for a number of reasons, we haven't been able to the past 3 weeks, but have come out on top. And shoot, I don't care if it's by 1 point or by 20. I'd rather it be by 20. We got to come out of Chapel Hill with a win because we come out of Chapel Hill with a win, we are going to keep the good times rolling. I want to see Chandler Morris explode a little bit more in the passing game. He's done a very good job in regulating mistakes at the quarterback position. And that sounds a little bit disparaging for a second because you're like, well, don't you want him making plays, not just playing to limit mistakes? Well, Tony Elliott's offenses are very philic to these gunslinger-type quarterbacks, and I think Chandler Morris is the first one that has the ability to realize when a play just the ball needs to be thrown into row G, or we'll just take the 5 yards and live to fight another day. But I do want to see the gunslinging Chandler Morris out this week. I do want to see that a little bit because I want to let it drag on UNC. UNC very much came into this year expecting to, there were people putting them in the playoff. Not a soul was putting Virginia in the playoff. There were a lot of people who expect us to maybe get 3 or 4 wins this year. People were not very bullish on Tony Elliott, even less so on Des Kitchings. And this is arguably the first game where we have a chance to truly shut some people up. Because this Virginia football program has been disrespected, especially this year. This is a team that has been overlooked and undervalued. Our whole team is that basically. You've seen the 5-star quarterbacks that were almost at Virginia, and went to other places, whether it be the quarterback at South Carolina, whether it be the quarterback at Texas right now. They thought, man, that's Virginia. I think this is a chance for us to be like, you know what? We are UVA. The Adventures of Caveman is cheesy as hell. We do some weird, funny things. We play the New Year's song after a touchdown. But you know what? When that whistle blows, we're going to come off the ball and we are going to let you know where we're from. Because, man, this year has me so excited. And I am very, very ready for a game where we go into Chapel Hill and we're able to dominate the game from the first whistle to the last. I am so, so excited for this game. So, man, my final score prediction, I wasn't able to get anyone else on tonight. It was kind of a busy schedule. I was supposed to have one of my main content creator, like one of my biggest inspirations content creation wise, my guy Ahmed, on to talk about UNC a little bit more. Wasn't able to make it today, but I will have him on in the future. My score prediction for this game is I'm going to put Virginia 38, UNC 17. And I think it's going to feel a lot more than that. It's going to feel like a 40 burger. Because I think that we're going into this game, we're back at full-ish strength. We've got some guys down, but we're at the healthiest we've been in the past month. And I think this team has a desire to prove to people that the past 3 weeks have not been a fluke. That we've won in some unconventional ways, whether it's by a safety, whether it's by multiple overtime game-winning plays. I think this team is on a mission to prove that it was not a fluke, because I don't think it is. I've watched the tape. This isn't a fluky football team. This is a damn good football team. And to go in a situation where I think the other team just kind of sticks their nose up at us, I'm ready to prove some people wrong. Let me know what your score prediction is down below. I might be feeling myself as a bit of a Virginia fan recently because we're in the top 15, or we're in the top 20 now. And I want to see us continue to grow. But, man, I've seen the tape. We are that good. We are legitimately that good. So, man, I'm so excited for this game. I will be posting to TikTok during the game with my thoughts on what's going on. And, man, go Hoos, beat the hell out of North Carolina.